Good evening and welcome back to Orc in the Dungeon. Tonight I'd like to invite you on a very personal journey, because I'm standing right in front of the house of Mikołaj Górecki, one of the most outstanding Polish composers of all time. And, as it turns out, my would-have-been neighbor. Because right across the street, in number 3, he lived in number 4. That's the place I've been living for the past 9 years, by simply wonderful coincidence. As a matter of fact, it's until this day the home of his late wife Jadwiga, who we see sometimes passing in front of our home on her way to church. Górecki was one of the first contemporary composers I was made aware of, through this recording in my own CD collection. At a first listen, his music seemed rather strange to me, but nevertheless I soon fell in love with it, taking a liking especially for the harpsichord concerto. Well, I was young and loved fast music. Later on I discovered his famous third and also the second symphony, and even had the opportunity to sing twice in the choir for performances of the monumental Beatus Vir. All works I still love and admire, for their incredible power and unique emotional qualities. While sometimes described as minimalistic, I'd argue that the true nature of his music is rather maximalistic. But I'm not really here today to speak about the famously chart-hitting Symphony of Sorrowful Songs, or the aforementioned Beatus Vir, commissioned by the Polish Pope and conceived in most turbulent circumstances. Instead, I'd like to focus on a little piece of chamber music that Górecki wrote in between those obvious masterworks, his Opus 37. Let's have a listen. Well, what do you think? These three little pieces for violin and piano were written in 1977 for Górecki's son Mikołaj, then a boy of 6, just embarking on his musical journey. Later on, one of the very few students of his father's, now an established composer in his own right. We had the opportunity to meet in person last summer when he told me the background story of the piece. Basically, Henrik was rather frustrated about the musical quality of the educational violin pieces his son had to play in music school. So he didn't hesitate and just went and wrote something by himself. We've just heard the result. You might now well ask yourself what could be so special about a little kid's piece. Well, strangely enough, it somehow stands for the very essence of Górecki's genius. Maximum expression through minimal technical means. And I mean this quite literally. String players might have noticed already. The three little pieces advance gradually in level of difficulty. Using in the violin part, just open strings in the first movement, open strings and first finger in the second movement, open strings and first and second finger in the third movement. In theory, this seems like quite a limitation, but still, Henrik Mikołaj managed to bring forth a true Górecki, an astonishingly engaging and musically demanding piece, which is on a technical level accessible for absolute beginner violinists. It's probably the piece with the best effort to reward ratio of all time. We all tend to admire the highly sophisticated complexity of the orchestral scores of Ravel, Stravinsky or Kaya Saariaho. Yet there is also great skill, real mastery in writing something this simple, this easy, while not giving up one bit of musical quality and expression. The greatness of this little piece is as much about what Górecki doesn't do as it is in what he does. Let's dig into the analysis. His base tactic is the use of open strings, with the corresponding violinistic choice of tonal center, relying on open strings and basic finger positions, gradually increasing the level of difficulty. In the first movement, open strings into moderate tempo. In the second movement, adding the first finger, but now in a slow tempo, which poses some difficulty in bow management. Whereas in the finale he adds also the second finger in its basic position, while implementing with the faster tempo new difficulties, demanding rapid bow changes and some left-hand quickness. I also love it how he makes the most out of the individual string color, concentrating mainly on the central strings and carefully avoiding the G string, which tends to sound pretty dull and unstable on small instruments. What I find also noteworthy is how well the piece works in the originally intended setting. The violin and piano parts are pretty well balanced, with the piano part providing the essential harmonic background, supporting the violinist throughout the piece, also intonation-wise. The keyboard accompaniment never overshadows the leading voice of the violin, which really shines through, especially when underlying in the first movement a beautiful shift to some wonderful major harmonies with the change to the E string. Let's conclude with a second listen, in a recording with my two daughters of 5 and 8 years, and their sweet little violins. Stay tuned, keep your ears open, and subscribe.